Is video, we don't need a quorum, it's a study session.
Recording in progress.
That's me. Let me go check and make sure I'm good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Dearborn Heights City Council meeting. Today's meeting is a study session, a little bit in regards to competitive bids, a little bit on the charter provisions, et cetera, et cetera. During the last council meeting, we had a discussion that was getting started and it was going to get a little further and further, and then that would have taken away from the regular council meeting. So I made a decision with support of the council members to do a study session on this particular subject. We'll have a discussion on it and then we'll go ahead and go from there as far as which direction we're going to go. The council member that's bringing this particular subject matter to the forefront is Councilman Zohar Abdulhaq. So I'll have him start and have him tell us the direction he wants this thing to go. Go ahead.
Okay, my motion is.
Turn your.
Okay.
Wait 1 second. All right, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Motion to affirm the city charter provisions regarding the use of competitive bids to buy all goods and products that exceed $1,500, and to the extent that the competitive bids to all services provided by consultants, vendors, and any other services to the city. In addition, direct the mayor to get the council's approval for all contracts involving employment, contractors, vendors, consultants, engineering, planning, construction, and legal services before making any payments from the city treasury.
Okay. That's the motion. What is specifically your biggest concerns? And what I don't want you to do, Councilman, let's not name any specific people's names because this is now
Just
what you've said is not about a specific name. So let's not name specific names.
I understand
Talk about
what
the
you want to
process.
say. I don't have any problem with any person involved in this issue. This is something to do with business done in the city in the way the mayor in the contract should be done in the city. I don't want the precedents to be set that the mayor, whether the present mayor or anybody in the future, to have a free hand to hire anybody under services or consultant without modifying or amending the budget to reflect the increase in the money going to spend on that subject, and to hire anybody they want without coming back to the city council for approval of the money, because we hold the money and we have to approve anything which is over $1,500. And that's why I'm bringing this.
Okay, now from the mayor's, I don't know, Roger, if you're going to speak on behalf of the mayor. Mayor's not here. But from the mayor's perspective, he believes that this will be problematic. I wish, honestly, the controller or somebody else was here to be able to talk on the opposite side. But nevertheless, the concern is this will make it very problematic whenever they're hiring for services, or even hiring somebody in general. One of the things that we can do where it could solve both problems. Now, this is all provided this doesn't go against the charter in the city of Dearborn Heights, or obviously anything else at the state, county, or state or national level. But maybe we could put it at a minimum. You know, anything exceeding X amount would be high. Would go ahead and go through city council, because the way it is currently worded right now, you have it to extend competitive bids to all services provided by consultants, vendors, and any other services to the city. So that would be a lot, quite a bit.
Council Chair,
Go back through the
any
council.
services over $5,000 have to come to the council. And always for transparency, for good business, for good behavior as government, and respond transparency, and responsible for the public, we need to know what's going on. I cannot, in good conscience, accept that somebody sitting in the mayor's office, whoever it is, comes and make a contract with somebody and doesn't amend the budget to allow that increase in salaries and to ignore the city council who's supposed to approve all the expenditures. It is a good government. It is a good decision by the administration to bring these things in front of the public, in front of the city council. And I remember our mayor, when he was on the council, him and I sat many, many times among friends and we discussed things similar to this issue. And he was up in arms against Paletco, and Paletco spent any money which he felt was not proper. So all I want from him is to continue following that path which he did during his tenure as a council member, and not basically to ignore the city council, because if you want to succeed in this city and move forward positively, both branches have to work hand by hand. Otherwise, if we do not trust each other, everything is going to be delayed. And as far as we're going to put roadblocks in front of the city business, the charter allow the mayor to make any payments between two city council meetings, which is already approved by the council. Then he brings it back to the council. And 1 week or a few days is not going to make a difference really in business in the city, because again, if there is enough trust, the mayor can call the chair of the council or the vice chair and the treasurer, and they can make arrangement to make payments in good faith and come back to the city council for approval. This happened many times. The trust has to be there. And if there is no transparency, there is no trust. I'm not going to be on the council more than, a couple more meetings, but this is a precedence. It has to be stopped right now. And we have to really set the standard that everything has to be in the open, nothing behind closed doors.
So I'm all for transparency, and I'm all for, us, having checks and balances and making sure everybody's is spending their money properly. The only challenge that I've got with this, and that's why I'm a little problematic with this, is you can get to the point where you're overprotected. So, like, for example, it gets cold. I don't want to get into a tank to make sure no snow gets on me. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when you're overprotected, it makes things, it makes the process slower, whether you're going to pay vendors or whether something, whatever it is that came up. Now, I do, in the same token, have a problem and a challenge when, and I'm not going to name specific, when directors are hired without going through city council. I didn't find that correct. I was told, well, we want to go into that specific situation, but
No names.
yeah, no names. So specific directors should not be hired without going through city council. I agree with that. Nobody should be hired for a 50, 60, 70, whatever it is, $1,000 job without going through city council. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I don't believe it'd be the right thing at the same time to go super hardcore on this, and where we're checking on every single thing. Since we as a council body are not here at City Hall every single day, obviously, it's a part-time job. I'm just concerned about how problematic that could make it to the administration. And not siding with them, I'm just saying it the way it is. Let's allow Roger to say.
Beside one more important thing, when you have something like this, did it go out for competitive bid?
When you say like this, you're talking about when a director is hired?
Yeah, when contract like this, without mentioning names, did it go out for bid? Is it supposed to go out for bid? Do we get something probably better, less money, better terms for the city? I always said when I was on the council before, or I was a resident sitting out there, that always do not let anybody, like the federal government, do not let anybody stay more than 5 years, then put their contracts out for bid. That's the practice the federal government does. And we have, I go back to the same thing. Transparency. If there is no transparency, there is no trust. I will not trust anybody. With public money, I will not trust myself. We have to be transparent, simple and easy. That's the issue at hand here. I'm not trying to change the charter. I'm not trying to put roadblocks in the administration's, face. All I want is for the residents to know what they are spending their money on. Is it worth it? This money, is the person we are hiring really capable of doing this job? Did we do due diligence by bidding it out, by following the process, following the charter? That's all I'm asking.
Okay,
Chair.
Councilman Constant, then Roger, then Councilman Ahmad.
Just as a segue to our corporation council, so Roger, am I correct in saying that right now the charter covers goods, purchases of goods over a certain amount, but not services? This in effect would extend it to services and service contracts? The charter amendment.
Like,
The charter amendment that was voted on covers competitive bidding procedures, policy stands for the purchase or contracting of materials, supplies, and public improvements. In fact, the language referred to by Councilman Hack, no contract shall be entered into a 9.4 of the charter, approval of contracts. No contract shall be entered into the city, by the city, for the making of any public improvements or for the purchase of any materials, tools, apparatus, or any other things, the consideration of costs of which shall exceed $5,000 until the same shall have been approved by a majority of the council elect. The charter 9.4 has not been changed. 9.1 is what was voted on, and in the letter by the Office of the Great Seal, November 21st, 2007, to our clerk, they said that the charter amendment was not met properly, Attorney Gary Miyake fixed it because you need the process of the governor to approve it, and it's a procedure, right? So, but nothing was dealing with the service part. That was not specifically not done. Now, the charter is tied in with the ordinance in the letter, and I pulled a copy of the ordinance. The ordinance is not 9.1. When we had the motion read, I thought it read the proposed amendment to city ordinance 9.1 reads as follows. I thought that's what it said. But 9.1 is not an ordinance. The ordinance is under
1.7.
actually I have a copy of I pulled out a copy of
You're
it.
talking about the ordinance about competitive bidding?
Code of.
Yes.
That's
yes.
9.1,
No, 9.1 is the charter.
right?
And the
Oh, you're talking about the ordinance
the
specific. Okay.
ordinance is H 0702.
Mhm.
And Gary in his letter, November 6th of 2007 says, as we discussed by telephone yesterday, this is to Mayor Lecco. As we discussed by telephone yesterday, the possible adoption of amendments to section 9.1 and 9.2 of the city charter will require the adoption of a competitive bidding ordinance. What the bidding ordinance focused on was the 1,500 and the amount of money that could change. But since the adoption of a permanent version of such ordinance could be rather involved, please find and close the proposed interim competitive bidding. This proposed ordinance generally adopts current competitive bidding standards. It authorizes the use of various competitive bidding procedures not explicitly recognized under the charter. Bidding procedures was not recognized, not the service contracts in his letter. Further, it makes an exception for competitive bidding in the case of single source bids. If there's only one party that does it, then we don't have to go out and get competitive bids, for instance. But and then what happened is 9.1 was adopted, initially rejected, sent back in with the corrections, but that's 9.1, not HR, which I have a copy of, and we had a hard time. The clerk's office was so diligent working with me. searching. We had to go back through all the files by hand to find the ordinance, and the ordinance just talks about the city of Dearborn Heights providing chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances deals with the procedures for competitive bidding, but it does not include services, that issue. Now, if we, what I did, my municipal experience, I'm not gonna brag, I've taken time to talk with professionals who, with the AG's office, and we have their written letters and suggestions of it. Their basic thing was the way that ordinance, and they looked at the ordinance, said it's not complete sentences. And you can't use that to change the the charter. And that's what you would do if you put that through. And when you do, what you should do, and what we should do, and we walked through the procedures of how to do an amendment to the charter to include what you want, how to put it on the ballot, how to get the governor's approval, the proper procedures, or a revision of the charter, which sets up a 9-member committee within 60 days of the vote that will sit and look at it and put a revision together for the city council's approval. But if we do it, just putting a motion in, then we're violating our charter and we're breaking our charter. That's not from me, that's from my consultation. I have the list of names and the people and the lawyers I talked to at the AG's office. They're the ones who've done the training, for instance, George Elworth. He's in charge of the special divisions. They put together the training in 2019 for municipal attorneys regarding the state review process for charter amendments proposed by resolution of the city council. They also put, and that's published, and we have a copy of it. We also went through putting together his the spreadsheets and the background to do this work, to get an amendment what you want and the effect of what you want done to the voters. I think if we change that, then we're negating what the voters did in 2007. If we change if they didn't put that in, but we go and change it now, a few of us. And I say us, and I say that in good faith, and I trust everything you're saying. I also trust the mayor. I trust you're acting in good faith. You don't want waste. You don't want negligence. You want professionals. I'm giving good faith that the mayor wants the same thing. And if we go forward working together, I think we take that approach. We want the voters to have a say in this. If we're going to change it and change our form of government, like I said before, from a mayor council to a council manager, then we're changing the government. We can only do that by a revision, or a review of the charter, revision of the charter. So I don't want us to violate the charter by pushing this through. And what Council Chair Abdallah said about having to control it here, we try to get Plant Moran because they've done a full spreadsheet of what the effect would be on us on the daily operation. They couldn't be here today. They couldn't even be here by Zoom. But we weren't trying to push this off past to December 5th and be disrespectful, honestly disrespectful to you that we didn't take this seriously. I have the materials I've put together.
Nico, please go.
I have the materials I've put together for your review. I have the opinion and a review of the George Elworth, the Attorney General's office, as well as the Office of the Great Seal. And the Office of the Great Seal, even though we may vote on something, and this may go to all of our amendments, I mean, going back to well, even before we were a city, if we don't get the registered with the Office of the Great Seal, it's not valid. So if we vote on it and the voters make it, vote on it and approve it, then it's a process that it has to go through. Then they have to review it and then they put it in their records.
Question, Raj. Thank you for all what you've done. And if you can share it,
Absolutely.
all this information, if you can email it, I appreciate it. Is there anything in the charter you can code that allow this mayor to enter into a contract and make payments on behalf of the city without approval of the city council?
Well, I looked at the powers of the mayor and I pulled out what the mayor can do. And it says he has the right to administratively function if it doesn't contradict anything in the charter. And through his administrative, it says on the section 5.3, the duties of the mayor. It says he shall exercise and perform all the administrative functions of the city that are imposed by law, this charter, or by any other city ordinance or resolution not inconsistent with the provisions of this charter under 5.3 section L. Okay, and then in terms of the corporation council's powers and duties, we are able to enter the contracts with the law firms we hire by ourselves. Now, I'm appointed and approved by you. But the service contracts we perform by the charter are delegated to us. Now, whether you pay it or not comes to you. And that's the final approval. So that's where that motion sort of contradicts a couple of parts of our charter. And I didn't dare come before you and say, I'm interpreting it. I had to rely on people who've worked with since 2007 with Jeremy Hockey and gone through.
No, normally in the absence of a clear wording, clear charter provisions, I believe the city council should have the say whether to pay somebody to approve their contract or not. You cannot, because you cannot have one person based on what you read do everything, and we don't know why.
You have to trust that the people who are in charge, that the people elect are doing their jobs. They're not paying themselves money. If they hire someone to run the director's positions, then you have to trust that in good faith that unless you see something that's legitimate that says no, they're not. To run it.
I'm not going to go into why or not, but
well,
in good faith, I would like the city council to have say in this because this is taxpayers' money, and there is no way I will trust any one person to make that decision. Because tomorrow, if he signs a contract with for $2-3 million, and he brings it as a claim, and we vote on it, we don't know what is it for. What's the difference?
You want to approve paying it, but the other thing is, if you want that, I'm saying turn it over to the voters. That's the proper way to.
So I am with you 100%. 2 years ago, I put motion and we voted on it 7-0 to amend the charter. And 2 years passed and nobody brought it back to the table to establish committee to amend the charter. Today, I was planning on putting actually bringing resolution, give it to Dave to put it on the next meeting. Basically to establish commission to review the charter because it's too old. It needs lots of changes. The whole world changed. And we need to make sure that every dollar we spend in this, administration or different administration, it is going to the right place, to the right people, and to give the maximum benefit to our residents.
I think the whole charter needs a review. And I agree 100% with you to set up a committee to do that.
But eventually, obviously, we need the residents' approval. Councilman Ahmad, and then after that, there's somebody online.
I had a question for a corp counsel, which is probably he answered about who was the second opinion. And I know last week you said you're gonna email it to us, but I guess you didn't. You forgot all those second opinions. Sorry. How we can come up with something for Councilman Abdelhad resolution just to, instead of going to the voters, just to make sure we have more transparency and making sure that everybody is following process. I mean, it's not a secret. I mean, we're approving stuff and we know exactly it's not following the process. Even though with contracts, the administration did have some people sign, they're not even following their contracts. So at least we need, I agree. We need something to make sure that everybody is following the process.
Okay.
So, as a corp counsel, I think you need to help us to come up with something.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
Be done by ordinance.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Gary Miyake next. He called me and asked me if he could speak in the beginning because he had an appointment to get to eventually. We will be taking, by the way, audience participation, just so that you know. So towards the end of this, or I'll even do it right in the middle in case somebody has a question.
Great, thanks, Dave.
No problem. Sorry? I know what he said.
He said the
The
middle.
middle would be great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, great.
All right, Gary, you wanna go ahead and unmute, please?
He's already.
Yeah, I'm on this line right here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Council Chair, for giving me this opportunity. I just wanted to talk about a few things. First of all, legally, you can end up doing what you are talking about doing as long as you adopt an ordinance to do so, right? There is no provision in the Home Rule City Act that prohibits this type of ordinance from being adopted. If you're not sure, look at Section 5 of the Home Rule City Act, MCL 117.5. You'll see no prohibition on having bidding ordinances or procedures. And Section 9.1 of the Charter does not, also does not prohibit this from being done by ordinance. It sets forth certain competitive bidding procedures pertaining to the purchase of or contracting for materials, supplies, and public improvements. It does not address services, but it does not prohibit services, and nor should that be interpreted in any sort of fashion of that sort. We should always remember that the city, and when I say that, it's generally the city council, has powers that are more generally granted to it under Section 2.8 of the Charter, which I read to you recently, which states the city shall have the power to exercise all municipal powers in the management and control of municipal property and in the administration of the municipal government, whether such powers be expressly enumerated or not, to do any act to advance the interests of the city, the good government and prosperity of the municipality and its inhabitants, and then it goes on. So the police powers of the city, which can be exercised by the city council, clearly are broad enough to end up allowing for competitive bidding more generally. And Section 9.1 of the Charter does not say that they cannot end up being applied to things beyond the items that are noted. So therefore you have that power. And I would note this idea has been recognized by the Michigan Court of Appeals, for example, in 1984 in the J.J. Zayte Trucking versus City of Detroit case, where they basically said, quote, the provisions of statutes, charters, and ordinances requiring competitive bidding and the letting of municipal contracts are for the purpose of inviting competition to guard against favoritism, improvidence, extravagance, fraud, and corruption, and to secure the best work or supplies at the lowest price practicable. And they are enacted for the benefit of property holders and taxpayers and not for the benefit or enrichment of bidders, and should be so construed and administered as to accomplish such purpose fairly and reasonably with sole reference to the public interest. So this is a core municipal good government sort of thing that you can do, and nothing in the Charter says that you can't do that, and you can do this by ordinance. You do not have to end up doing a charter amendment. You do not have to do a charter revision. That is absolutely incorrect. And think about it this way, you already have been doing it for years. As a matter of fact, every time we do a waste hauling contract, how has that been done? Through competitive procedure and competitive proposals being made. Mr. Farina noted in terms of assistant corp counsels that they end up basically being appointed by him with the concurrence of the mayor. That is correct, although it has to end up being done within the budget amounts that are set by the city council and according to the fee schedule set by city council. He does not have the authority to just come up with the amounts that everyone is going to get paid. But even then, think about it, just recently, you as a body ended up approving a particular law firm, I believe it's Marui and Hallman, Zach Hallman and Mr. Marui, who is Ode Marui, who is the city attorney for the city of Hamtramck, and I've dealt with for many years. They were selected by virtue of a competitive bidding process. And even then, even with there being a specific charter provision, there are ways in which you as your body can end up insisting on certain things because you still control the purse. And in this situation,
may I respond?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not finished, if I may.
Okay, please.
With respect to this, it's one of those situations where you, as the city council, can say, look, we're insisting that you're only going to spend the money in a particular way. And therefore, because with like a federal government situation, because the feds require this competitive bidding, it's not that the feds require us to violate our charter. It's that they just simply say, if you don't follow competitive bidding in this situation, we aren't going to allow you to use any money we give you to reimburse your attorneys for the work that's done. So we use competitive bidding. The city has used competitive bidding. There are numerous other examples where it's been done for services. I think it's a great thing. Kudos to all of you on the city council for taking this up, especially during a holiday week. Kudos also to Councilman Abdul Haq for championing this issue. But you can do what you want to do as long as you do it by an ordinance and you make sure that you pay attention to certain things in terms of services, recognizing also that straight up W-2 employees, not contractor firms, not Wade Trim, not AMD, not some sort of firm, but actual employees, their compensation is set under section 4.9 of the charter. And the way you control it as a city council, namely how much people get paid, is to end up insisting in your budget that these amounts will end up being abided by and will only be paid a proportional amount during the year. So, and if I'll stick around in case council wants to hear what I have to say in response to anything that Mr. Farina might want to say, particularly where, the history from 2007 I'm very familiar with. And I know that we got everything in, gave them everything that they ultimately wanted, and the state of Michigan, the Office of the Great Seal, basically acknowledged receipt of the charter amendment, which was an issue that was kind of made questionable by some comments at the last meeting, but it truly, there's no question but that charter amendment was adopted, just like, Act 78 was adopted in 1964.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Yeah,
Roger want to go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's be nice, please.
I'm just gonna say, look, you were city council, corporation council for 15 years or more than that. 26 years, and we haven't dealt with this issue now. There's so much I've seen that has not been touched by Mr. Miyake, but all of a sudden he's a genius now and can fix everything and wants to be that service. I'm upset because I looked at, just his quote about CEDD. He doesn't even know that O'Day and Zach and that firm is paid for by a grant, the CEDD grant, and it's federal FEMA money. So it has to go to a bid. I was part of the process when they set up the bid, make sure it goes out. So say that's equal to what the charter says is absolutely misleading. And then he quotes the Home Rule Cities Act, MCL 11721-117-25, and it specifically says the method of amending a city charter, not by a motion and to an ordinance to change the charter. And I took the time to go to the Attorney General's office and speak to their special division, their municipal law department, to get my information and data, instead of relying on 26 years of doing nothing to a lot of the city and not even looking at redoing the whole charter, like Councilman Abdel Haq said. That's an excellent idea. It should have been done 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. But to come forward and speak to the city council and say, I am now the authority. No, you're not. You messed up.
Okay.
A lot of stuff you have to fix. And I'm going to say 117.24 and his argument that he knows what happened in 2007, it was rejected. Now, I sent an email to the Office of the Great Seal. I said, could you find 9.1? They have not given that back to us as yet. There's an unsigned letter from 2007, December 10th, that was sent to Mr. Miyake. It was not even sent to the clerk's office. It's sent unsigned. And when they checked, they couldn't even find it. Now I've got to go to the archives to see if it exists there. He brought up Act 78. You know what? There is no, and what they sent in November 21st said that they don't have an approval by the governor's office to put this in. Why don't we have a record of Act 78 approval by the governor's office? Why don't we have a letter from the Office of the Great Seal for Act 78 approving Act 78? Where is the actual Act 78 language, Mr. Miyake? What happened? You don't have.
You want me to respond?
We can't find it.
Okay.
1 second, please.
So,
I'm
you
gonna give
want to talk about Act 78, just
Okay.
be right.
Okay, Gary, I'm gonna give you just a quick 30 seconds, and I'm gonna go to people in the audience.
Okay. All right. First of all, Act 78 does not require the governor's approval. It is not a charter amendment. It's very simple. That's why that's not done. What was done back in the Office of the Great Seal, that's all you're going to receive, because that's all we ever received was a communication from the Office of the Great Seal. And in terms of
On Act
revising the
78?
charter,
No way? You haven't
Act
provided
78,
it.
Act 78 is not a charter amendment. It doesn't go to the governor.
Where is the Office of the Great Seal on Act 78? Where is it?
They wouldn't need it. It's a local referendum.
Where's the record of Act
All right,
78?
let me wrap this up. I'm gonna go to people in
You
the
know what?
audience.
All right.
1 second, Gary. Rachel, you had a question?
I mean, I always have questions. So, should Rachel appoint Merrick Street, all that fun stuff? First question would be, let's imagine the mayor signs a $2 million contract. Let's say it's a service contract. He doesn't need council's approval for it. Or let's say he signs a contract for $1. When it comes to council for approval for payment, if they decide not to pay it, are we not obligated through the contract, a legal agreement to make that payment, especially if the services were already rendered?
No. How are you gonna,
So-
how are you gonna approve you have to approve the contract.
Who?
So if the
Who
mayor
would have to
signs the
approve it?
contract, okay, if the mayor signs the contract,
Okay.
okay, but the contract it's always reviewed by corporation counsel,
Mhm.
correct? So if it's for $2 million to do what, a public improvement, what's gonna be $2 million?
Let's say
What
it's a
typically-
$2 million service like waste hauling.
Good.
That's a
I'm
service,
glad you
right?
said that.
Great choice,
Well,
right?
it's waste hauling, it's also a public improvement.
Okay.
Therefore, it would come to the city council for approval before it can go there. And
So-
it has to be competitive bids for that example you just gave.
That's a really good thing, because that leads into another question I have of what is the definition of a public improvement?
It's
So,
under, yeah, oh, I'm glad you said that.
yeah,
You have it under the charter. You have,
because I can only
you
find
have
it in the special
specifications
assessments.
under the charter, 9.1, 9.3, 9.4, 9.5.
Right.
They talk about what approval of the contract specifications, no public improvement, costing more than $5,000 shall be contracted for or commenced until drawings, profiles, estimates for the same shall have been submitted to the council and approved by it. And a copy thereof shall hereafter remain on file in the office of the clerk, subject to inspection by the public. Then on 9.4, no contract shall be entered into by the city by the making of any public improvement or for the purchase of any materials, tools, apparatus, or any other thing or things, the consideration or cost of which shall exceed $5,000 until the same shall have been approved by a majority of the council elect. And then all contracts prior to submission to the council shall be reviewed by the mayor on the 9.5. This is all on the competitive bidding on the contracts, chapter 9.
So what is a public improvement for the average resident who has no idea what we're talking about?
What you just said, waste hauling.
So that's a
Or
public.
something, or
Okay.
something, yeah, or something like a construction on a building.
But what about hiring
So-
a director?
Can you
Okay,
give me an
hiring a
example
director
of a,
for what?
of a
Well,
service? Well,
I
so-
thought the mayor,
Live.
Sorry, so could you give then an
Sorry.
example of a service that is not a public improvement?
I'm not gonna give examples right now.
Well, so
I'm
are-
not thinking
well,
of any right
because
now.
that's
You
the
can,
question, right?
you
Is,
can.
well, so is there a public improvement that's a service
Well,
that would, or that wouldn't be a public improvement?
well, if you're talking about directors, the mayor has the power to appoint the director.
No, I'm not talking about directors.
Okay, now I'm just saying what the,
I'll have him answer mine after.
Yeah.
okay,
So if there is theoretically a service that's provided that's not a public improvement, that does not improve property values, that does not improve some real property that the city owns. If that such service does exist.
Well, for instance, Gary gave a example, a wrong example of the law firm for the CEDD.
So legal
But if
services.
when I approved a law firm to do the work there, I looked at his memos about how much to pay, I think the firm was Roncilio, or one of the firms, yes, Roncilio. I looked at the letter that he gave put no cap or limit amount. I mean, it was 160 or 150, but it doesn't say pursuant to the charter that it's limited to that, or you can put a cap on that per se, but it becomes to the city council when they approved it, what the amount was there, and I looked at the motions. So I think in terms of a service contract, there's some things that the charter lays out. And we can amend some things by ordinance, but you can't change the language of a charter, which is what this motion is doing. And contrary to what Mr. Miyake is saying, you can't just say, oh, I changed an ordinance, because he came up with this motion, I was told, a couple of years ago after the mayor had died, Mayor Paleco had passed. And this was presented as a way, but it was never presented before that. It was never presented as a way to limit Mayor Paleco's decision making or any distrust of Mayor Paleco. But all of a sudden it becomes a distrust of the mayor, of Mayor Bazzi, for waste, negligence, professionalism. Be open, absolutely. Councilman Abdelhak is absolutely right. Be open.
Well, I think you're kind of, you kind of lead into what my actual feelings on all of this were, and I'm gonna be quick here. I'm kind of gonna be the mom for a second. This isn't about who signs what contract or whatever. What this is about is trust. And there's a lack of trust among residents in the administration. And some of our council members are responding to that feedback they've received from residents. And what really needs to happen here is an agreement, perhaps a gentlemanly agreement, to provide that information to council so they know what the fiduciary responsibilities and obligations that we have. Because if the mayor signs, even if it's okay for him to sign this contract, let's say it is, he could sign a $2 million service contract for legal services and doesn't need council approval to sign that contract. It doesn't matter. He should be telling them that he's obligated the city to spend $2 million. And that's the problem, that the mayor's not communicating every obligation that the city has to the people that have to pay the bills. That's the real problem here. We're talking about this nitty-gritty detail legal BS right now that is important for a charter commission to deal with. And thank you, Zuhair, for bringing that up and saying that you're going to try and get that on the agenda, because I was going to be coming next week and saying, if you guys don't get that on the agenda and taken care of before the end of the year, I'm going out and getting the petition signatures we need to get that charter commission going.
Okay.
So
Rachel,
focus on that real thing though, right?
I want to answer you, and I'm going to go ahead and go with the next resident.
Public improvement. AMD is working on 4 different departments. Those departments have budget. None of those departments, their budget was modified to reflect, the increase in their obligations. It never came for in front of us was amendment to change those budgets for those 4 departments. Plus, when we work on sewer, when we work in building department, when we work on other things, those are all public improvements. Those are definitely, the result of them is public improvement. When we do engineering drawing, when we do contract with somebody to finish the CSO or the water meters, which are the story of my life in the city, all those are public improvement. And in my humble opinion, it will be a good government. It will be a good fiduciary responsibility to bring this in front of the council. And I hope the mayor will listen and will work with us and start building a trust with this council. Because you have a new council in January, and I hope it will start fresh with trust.
Okay, the resident, go ahead.
Hassan Saab, John Daly, Dearborn Heights. So question to you, Roger, is with appointments, you say the mayor has the authority to do so. Where in the charter does it say, for example, let's go with the police department? When did they ever have a director or directors? And when was one ever hired as a contractor and one as an employee without council's approval?
Well,
And when was the deal negotiated? By who was negotiated? Was ever bought to council that these positions were negotiated? Now we come back again to say to transparency, these aren't $1,500 positions. These are positions worth almost $100,000 each. That's taxpayer money. That's not being transparent. When you're hiring positions where you say Act 78 and you got within your department, you can hire, but you decide to hire from outside to bypass the charter, to bypass the act, to hire on your own, that's not being transparent.
well, you have our fire chief, and I don't see a contract there, and I think the drop, I can't discuss the terms of it, but I think, I think you have to look at the overall picture. Was the motive to put directors in to hurt the city? Did they?
I mean, you're hurting the city's employee with bargaining.
Hey, did they
No, no, no,
circumvent
no,
Act
no.
78? All I know is the commissioner passed away as soon as I started last September. And he was in the position of running the city. So the directors took over a lot of the jobs and functions there. Was it necessary? I think so. I looked at it, I'm new. I don't have any bias on either side. I looked at what the problems were in the department. And I represented legally a lot of the people who went through the city, on both sides. A lot of the defendants that I represented suffered because of the police department at that time. And I saw changes. So that's all I can answer. Now, whether it's Act 78, I've taken the time to contact every agency to find out what happened to those records in 1964. And I'm pursuing that because the way, for instance, Westland uses Act 78 was different than how we're using it here. And that needs exploration. And I think when we put a committee to look at our charter and really go through it, and one person I would trust is Mr. Abdul Haq, because I've worked and watched how detailed he is when he does anything. And that's the kind of scrutiny. And if there's something about this, I say we need to get to the bottom of it. I agree with you.
So back to my question is going back to the directors and the commissioner. Those positions have never existed under the city charter in the police department. So for you to say we got to go outside and hire these and appoint them through the mayor rather than going through the process of promoting, yeah, I do see a problem with it because you have people in the department that are more than capable of doing these jobs that you can promote within, but you choose to go outside and get them as a service contract, not as an employee.
I'm going to respond to you because in 1995, I set up the Massachusetts Minority State Police Office. We were about to incorporate our own union because they were blue, right? But there's a difference between light blue and dark blue. We were fighting the state police internally. So when I came here and I saw what was going on here, and I know what I did in 1995, the fights that we struggled with. And I talked with Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, New York, and Virginia. We were fighting to get black state police officers on. So when I come in here and I see what I'm facing, and it's a deja vu, and I haven't seen any Arab officers in any in certain positions, and the recruitment process,
So
and the
what's
hiring
changed?
process, and the promotional process. I know. I know when I see what I see, and I look at the changes, and I was very, very impressed with the mindset to try and represent the city and the composition of this city.
Mr. Saab.
So I'm sorry, just,
Mr. Saab,
yeah.
just one, you're going to be on this council,
Yeah.
you're going to take an oath of office in January. I will put in your hand something. The charter calls for civil safety commission. It's in the charter. I tried to put it forward in 2021, but it didn't go through. My recommendation, why don't you start by bring in resolution to establish that commission, which should be looking at every department in the city, not just the police and fire, to improve the safety of our residents.
Okay,
Will do.
I'm gonna give you time for one more question, but we're getting off track here. I'm gonna get back to what that subject at hand.
No. My thing is about service contracts. It's about contracts. It's that contracts that are just made behind closed doors and nobody's made aware of. And these contracts are not $1,500 or $5,000. These contracts are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when you say that Roger goes back to the commissioner and everything, there's still good officers in the department that could have easily been put in these positions. We're gonna have to go outside of the department and to any other city or any other region to get somebody in. You're just degrading the police department by hiring people from outside. And these people clearly don't work for the city. They work for the mayor. And that's how, because when you ask questions, you don't get them. They're not transparent. They're not open. And these are questions that when it falls back to come to city council for the reason of know who you're hiring, know why we're hiring, why we need them, for what we need them. I mean, the roles of the commissioner was on for almost a year by himself. He was doing a good job. But when the commissioner passed away, you guys hired two more. And I hear a third one's coming on board. And that's not right. Thank you.
So, Roger, section 94, approval of contracts. No contract shall be entered into by the city for the making of any public improvements or for the purchase of materials, tools, apparatus, et cetera, et cetera. Where in that does it allow for any mayor, we're not talking about a specific mayor, for any mayor to be able to hire directors? So let's just say, I'm not even gonna say tomorrow morning, let's say 20 years from now, 40 years from now, a mayor gets up and says, you know what? I'm gonna hire 4 more directors for my controller's office. Can a mayor, per the charter, do that? And how?
Okay, I know they had in 2007, one of the proposals was to separate the parks and recreation from the library, right?
Right.
And honestly, I'm trying to find that as approved, but looking at that, but I believe it was, right? So that separated directors. Now the mayor picked the directors for that position, right? Now, but the voters voted on to do it. He couldn't just appoint directors that had parks and they had separated himself. He needed the voters' approval, and it went through an amendment or vote to be able to do that. So,
But I'm talking about, okay, so let's go back to today.
Yeah,
Forget 2007, forget 2040. Today, can any mayor get up tomorrow morning and hire 2 additional? Because let's face it, see, you're saying, there's no advantage to a mayor. Well, there is an advantage to a mayor, because if I, as a mayor, put in 2 additional directors in almost every department, that's gonna make me as a mayor look good. Because you got additional people getting the job done, so it's gonna make me look good. So there is an incentive for that particular mayor, which is fine. Because if that brings better customer service to the residents, great.
Council Chair,
But then the question is, I'm sorry, one second, but then the question is, can a mayor do that without going through city council? And even if it is okay for the charter, which I personally read this, I'm not a lawyer, but I know how to read enough contracts and legalese, not at lawyer level, but enough to know what I'm reading. Not one thing showed me personally where any mayor is allowed to hire somebody. And even if he is allowed to hire somebody, or she is allowed to hire somebody, or anybody is allowed to hire somebody, any mayor,
has to concur with council.
just for full transparency and for less headache, and nobody can ever question it, come in and say, I'll be hiring at, person X for $70,000 for this purpose. This is what it'll bring to the residents, and this is the type of services that we're looking for, and we can afford it. Beautiful.
You're saying, is there a proof? If a mayor walks in and says, I'm gonna hire this person for $70,000 to do this job, it's still gonna be subject to the payment of that salary. Is that in his budget? Who approves the budget? You do. If he's gonna put that in the budget, is he Well, how much, what's his limitation? He doesn't have unlimited power.
I get that it is not
Right?
limited
And
power,
our, and
but it
our-
was used
and as
by,
opposed to say Hamtramck or Warren, Hamtramck or, that may have a city manager that does that. That does all those functions. Their form of government is run, not the mayor, but by the city manager.
correct, correct.
Okay, but the city manager can do it. Now, he'll have, once he votes and everything and proves it and signs the agreement, the money and the payment still comes from the city council.
Okay.
That makes sense.
But where the council members are having a problem with is, for example, a few months back in the aid department, a commissioner was hired and 2 new directors were hired. And most of the council members found out about it through social media. Forget the charter, forget ordinances, forget motions, forget everything. Laws, constitution, forget everything. Do you think it's appropriate for any council body to hear about 3 new hires at executive positions through social media?
Would I do
Just,
it?
no, just answer the question, yes or no?
It's a yes, no answer. I mean, we keep beating around the bush.
Okay, how's this?
I'm a
Leave the-
lawyer.
Is he allowed or not?
Yes or no.
Is he allowed or
Leave
not?
the fifth, leave
No,
the fifth,
no, no.
but I don't know what the answer would be.
No, I'm gonna, first of all, I assume that I assume, I'm not making, I'm saying, I will give the benefit of the doubt that the mayor or chief of police or whoever makes the decisions is acting in good faith to the citizens of the city.
I have no doubt.
Now, given that, and if there is a reason, if there's division, if there's things going on with the council, I don't. And people are broadcasting on social media, and it's getting a negative impact on the police department who have to serve the citizens. Then what do? We disclose it to everybody until the decision is, and then sabotage the decision where people are working, and people were working. I'm not gonna mince words. People working within that police department that were out to sabotage the chief and hurt the chief and hurt the mayor. They're excellent officers. As I said, there are bad apples, but your department is one of the, your city council, your department, your city has excellent people. But you had people a lot that were out to sabotage the chief.
Roger,
Okay?
was my
Let him
respect to
finish,
you.
let him finish, let him finish. Are you all set?
So,
I love to hear him.
but I'm ready.
I agree with you 100%,
Right, yeah.
but it's all about the process. It's all about the transparency. If we do not establish them, then there is no way the council and the public and the mayor are going to be on the same page.
I'm gonna say this with you. I'm saying, I agree, let's do it, but let's do it by an amendment. Let's do it not by a revision, which takes longer, an amendment. In fact, I got 3 copies of amendments from Hamtramck that were done last summer. It was done quickly and voted on by a special vote. So 3 of them I just got today, the Attorney General's office sent it.
I disagree because there's so much in that charter need to be changed.
Now, no, what I'm saying
I really
is,
would like,
no, what I'm saying is,
since his father, Mr. Constant, was one of the people who wrote that, I would love to see him,
Well-
chairing that and going with it.
what the Attorney General's office has sent me 3 amendments this summer by Hamtramck to amend their charter. And this is November. They had it done within a few weeks. Now, they did it by vote. They put it on that special election and they had to vote, not at the primary. But that's what we could do, the proper way to do it and get everything you want out. But every amendment it's specific for one thing. And the language has to be approved, but it can be done with working together. And I agree that since 1964, when is the last time the charter was
Revised, never.
Council Chair,
All right,
Council Chair,
I'm gonna take questions, but I'm gonna wrap this up in the
Yeah.
next 15 minutes, because I don't wanna keep going around. and
Council Chair,
around.
thank you so much. With all due
But
respect.
I also need direction from the council members. Which direction you wanna go with this thing? Do we kill it? Or is it something that should continue to be pursued? Well, these are options available.
Thank you, Council Chair. With all due respect, Corp Council, I mean, like 3 people asked the same question. I don't want to know how you feel about it. I just want to know a yes or no. Can the mayor hire a director, any department, and sign a contract without coming back to the council to approve it? It's a yes or no. I don't wanna, if we need them, we don't need them. I don't care about that. I just wanna know per charter, the charter allow the mayor to hire a director in any department and sign a contract without coming back to the council? It's just a plain yes or no.
Right,
Yeah, this is what, on the G and H of the charter. It talks about he shall be
You got a question,
responsible.
Tom? I'm sorry, what's-
efficient-
okay.
Sorry.
What's it? No, go ahead.
He shall be responsible for the efficient administration of all departments of the city government and shall allocate building space to the various departments. These are the duties that the charter says the mayor has. It talks about regulations. He shall approve the rules and regulations of the several directors. Commissions or boards in charge of departments, like he's appointing the board members for the different commissions. Before rules shall become effective, it says, except as otherwise provided by the charter. So you're giving your mayor in your charter these powers and these duties because you trust him. Now, if
I know,
you
but
see
whatever you
something-
just
if you
read, it
see-
doesn't say that
if
he
he's
can.
appointing someone to be a director, that's his cousin or his brother, and you're paying him and he's giving this exorbitant amount of money, okay? That can't fly by. The city council can step in and stop that, right? So how much power do I have if I appoint a director, you don't pay the director? How much power do I really have? But you have to trust that I'm acting in good faith. But our charter, this is the language on the duties on the 5.3 duties of the mayor, right? We have to look at all these provisions meticulously and go through. Okay, what you're saying, I'm not saying deny it. I'm saying it's just not the proper forum, but we could do an amendment quickly with the voters and have it approved, if that's what you want to do, and let the voters, let them make the decision. But there's a lot more than just this. There's a lot more issues that we have to look at and do it all, you know.
what we do in meantime, we pay the contract
For Mr. Dib.
for AMD.
Well, let's not name specifically. Let's talk generically. Okay, let's go ahead and go with Councilman Tom Wenzel. He had a question. Councilman, go ahead.
Thanks, Council Chair. You know, there's so much lack of transparency here. Like we were talking earlier, there was people hired and we didn't find out about it until on social media. And then Roger says, well, you know, you approve the budget. So during budget time, we asked over and over and over again for breakdowns of salaries for each department, including the police department. And we never got it. And in the very end, we got a very small breakdown. We still don't know how much these people are making. And that's transparency. And did we never voted to approve anybody's salary, a total budget that the mayor has or the police department has, but we've never approved salaries for specific people that we're talking about. And none of us even know how much their salary is. We've never seen the contract. If it's a 1-year contract, a 10-year contract, we have no idea of what the contract is and what we're paying. And that is not transparency whatsoever. That's just the opposite. So, I mean, we have the power to okay or deny the payments or in the budget for a certain position, but we don't even know how much that position is paying. How can we approve it? That's what we need. You know, we need total transparency on all these issues, like Zohair was saying. I mean, all of you sitting up there today had very good points. And why not do the right thing? We're not doing the right thing right now. Just do the right thing. What are we hiding? Somebody's hiding. It seems, in my eyes, someone's hiding something. Thank you.
Council Chair, I'm sorry, just to echo whatever Councilor Winsome said, we never had the contracts. I didn't have the contract till last meeting where we've been asking for the contracts for the past year. We never got their contract until before the meeting last week, an hour before the meeting, because there was something on the claims that needs to be approved. And I was like, you know what, I'm not approving this until I see a contract. And 1 hour before the meeting, I received that contract. And we've been asking for it for a year, almost a year, 10 months.
I thought there's so many FOIA requests and so many answers. We've given that to contracts upon contracts. We do everything out that I can't go specifically into it, but I thought, Mr. Saab's sent us a number of, FOIAs. I thought all that has been disclosed and put out.
I know, I mean, as council members, do we need to FOIA contracts? I mean, in the city? That's what I'm saying. I mean, when we ask for something, it's not given to us. And to receive a contract an hour before the council meeting, I mean, how much time do I have to review it?
I don't know which contract, but I'm not.
I'm
one of the
not-
directors.
But
Council Chair.
I agree, one thing, I agree with transparency. I don't think, and I've been a chairman of board of trustees, well, for the first charter school, one of the first 25 charter schools in this country, okay, we had staff of 80 and 25 board members, but I agree, I've worked with public monies, I've been entrusted with it, and for 5 years I ran it, so as a volunteer for 20 hours. I'm saying that to say that transparency is a hallmark, and I agree. I just think we just have to also be wise that people sometimes want to sabotage you. And just how do you balance transparency and trust each other to make sure we're working together for the same objective. And I like Councilman Wenzel. I think that I don't think I wouldn't agree that there's something nefarious or something deceptive or something malicious or malignant in this body or with the administration or with the council. I
Never said
wholeheartedly disagree with that.
I never
Okay,
used any of
Councilman
those terms.
Abdullah. I'm sorry, Councilman, so you're saying something?
I never used any of those terms that he said I just used, not one.
You did, you said it. Okay.
I said,
That's your-
someone's trying to hide something, I said.
Okay, well, when you say hide something, what do you think that
I
means?
say, what are the 3 words you just used?
It's malicious,
Malicious.
malignant, deceptive.
Deceptive?
Someone's being nefarious, someone's being, I'm throwing the
Google,
word.
Google trying to hide something.
Councilman Wenzel, Councilman Wenzel. When the
Yeah.
time of the budget comes for next year, the city council have the power to eliminate positions and change things in the budget. And that's when it is the best time for you if you're not happy with anything. And I think that's the time where you can eliminate those jobs. I did ask yesterday for some information from the human resource concerning this issue and from the controller. I did not receive them, and I hope that the directors of those 2 divisions, they understand that by charter, when the councilman walks into an office and asks for some document, they should show the most courtesy possible, and they should provide those documents according to the charter. So we don't need to FOIA, we don't need to do anything. It is our right by charter to get those documents immediately.
Of course.
Council
Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
I have 2 things I'd like to
Go ahead.
bring up. Okay. The first thing is the clerk's office is responsible for holding all of the city documents. But if it's not presented, contracts or anything, we don't have them.
Right.
Right? So
Well,
I
we
just
could-
wanted to mention that. Okay, we're the permanent record keeper. Right.
Can I ask you something? Because with that question you just said, I couldn't find any wage trim contracts in 2000 after 2000.
We might not have them. Maybe there was never one. I don't know. You're right. You're right about that. I don't know if
I
they ever
couldn't
have.
find anything. I checked.
Sometimes, Councilor, there are oral and handshake contracts.
These are $400,000, $500,000.
I understand.
And I don't know if
They
it
come
was-
to the city council and they approve them, and somebody approve them in the mayor's office, the controller, the treasurer. So there is a check and balance in every detail, but I
wanna make
agree with
sure-
you, there should be a contract, it should be going through process of bidding. They've been here for long time, and it is good government. If we go out for bid, we might get better deal for the city, better services.
Councilman, let.
And then I have one more thing, and I
Check with
just
your-
wanted to address this to Corp Council, is he was in the office yesterday looking at the 2007 charter amendments. And we did locate that letter from, the letter acknowledges receipt. I looked a little further, okay, and there was also another charter, I'm gonna keep looking, in 2015. And that letter we got to, and it was not signed as well.
Well, the interesting.
So I don't, maybe that was their practice. I don't know.
What we were missing was the letter that went to Miyake from the Great Seal office. And
No, we
then-
have
or who said it? No, we got the December 10th letter
Right.
unsigned. but we
Right.
didn't get anything because his letter was December 31st, 2008.
He was just, I think he was just shoring up the
But,
stuff
but,
from
but,
two
but
thousand
the
seven.
question I asked is, why in December 2008 would you suddenly decide to go back to 2007? And who are you responding to? Who's asking and why? Is it the mayor? Is it the city council? Who's asking
I
for
don't
the
know.
issue on the vote? Because those letters are missing.
He's online. Maybe he. Mr.
Yeah, what happened to
Bianchi?
those letters?
I mean, it just said, he please find enclosed a copy of the letter I received last year from the Office of the Great Seal, Michigan Department of State, showing that the filing requirements were met. This was a follow-up letter sent by the Office of the Great Seal that was sent after we provided further documents in response to the office's November 21st, 2007 letter.
Now, I'm glad you
I'm not
said
a
that
lawyer.
because he's responding to something a year later, but we don't know what he's responding to. Who asked the question? But when I sent the letter 2 weeks ago to the Office of the Great Seal and the two lawyers that are in charge of the voting, as well as the lawyer in charge of the Great Seal, they could not find this. So, and that letter you have is unsigned.
And the other one from 2016 was not signed either. So.
Yeah, that's the problem. So,
Well, that's
what are
the Office of the
what are
Great
they
Seal.
reviewing? I'm trying to get a copy of it. So we could see, and they said if it's not with the Office of the Great Seal, it doesn't have any validity. So that's why I said, do you have it? And they have not been able to find it.
I'm gonna ask Councilman Abdul-Haq to make one final statement and we're gonna make this a wrap.
Thank you, Chairman.
We do have one more person.
Yes,
Roger.
ma'am. Zoom.
If you are at liberty, you don't feel any pressure or anything. Is there a contract already written for AMD or not? If there is one,
Yes.
so we go in through circles. If there is one, I would appreciate it if it is brought next meeting to the city council to look at it, discuss it, approve it or disapprove it. And I do ask my council colleagues, councilmen, councilwomen, my colleagues, please, to email the chair that you want this subject to be on the agenda for next meeting so we can put it to rest. Thank you.
Okay.
And I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, everything you have done on this issue.
You're welcome. Any other final comments? Oh, I'm sorry, we got somebody on Zoom. Let me get the Zoom. Go
Can I
ahead.
go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes,
Oh, it's Gary.
just a few comments. Yeah, it's just me, Dave. Council Chair. I think there are just a few things. I'll direct my comments about Act 78 at a future meeting since it's been raised. Councilman-elect Saab's comments and the comments about the directors are very important. Recognize that you, as a body, are the only ones who are allowed to create departments under Section 5.12 of the Charter. But even then, no commission or department shall be created or established which invades or supplants the duties or functions of the various departments and commissions heretofore created. For example, the police department. So where these directors came from, how they came into being, how when they were not in the city budget, they ended up having contracts, personal service contracts made by the mayor is a mystery. And remember, I was corp counsel at that time. None of this ended up being raised with me. And I can say that because there was no communication that would be privileged with regard to that. That was handled through Mr. Makula. So if you look at the contracts, which there's no reason for you to wait a year to get the contracts, Councilman Abdul-Haq is correct. Section 18.2 says that all of these records shall be property of the city and shall at all times be subject to audit, examination, or inspection by any member of the council or by any person employed or designated by the council for that purpose. You should be able to go and with reasonable certainty within a few hours get anything that you ask for. And given what's been said in terms of some of these things, to be frank, and I wouldn't want to normally say this, but after how I saw Councilman Ahmad not being actually answered, you folks need to seriously consider having your own counsel who will do and will answer questions independently and will give you straight answers. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we
Thank you very
wasted
much.
26 years with you.
Anybody else on Zoom, Madam Clerk? Okay, anybody else in the audience?
Council Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman.
Yeah, I
Johnson.
just want to say that, congratulations to Councilman Abdul Haq. I'm looking at this and hearing the discussion. Obviously, we're spending some large amounts of money. And obviously, for the new positions in the police department, for the change in the certain directors' compensation, that needs to be discussed and approved by the council beforehand. Thank you.
Roger, one last question. Can we create units within the police department without going through Act 78? If we want, we have a department. Inside the department, there are units. There are detectives, there are traffic. Bureaus? Okay. Can we create something like that without going through Act 78? Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, we're gonna call this thing for a wrap. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and good night.
Thank you.
Hey, can I ask a